everyone. Today with me I have one of our RLAC tutors, Christine Jansen, and she is here to talk a little bit about being a parent of a child with dyslexia. And she is an absolutely wonderful tutor, trainer, and parent. So I'd like to thank her very much for being here today. Thank you, Christine.
Thanks for having me.
I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about her background, how she got into RLAC and tutoring, and about her son, who, like I said, is a student with dyslexia. So what signs did you notice in your son that led you to suspect that he may have dyslexia?
Well, really with Jacob, it started when he was in kindergarten and he was struggling in reading. He started getting reading intervention help right away in kindergarten, and it really lasted all through elementary. I suspected dyslexia back then, but was told over and over again, no, it's definitely not that. He's too young for us to diagnose that. He's really too young for us to diagnose him with anything at this point, but he continued to get intervention help. Some of the signs that stood out to me was spelling. He would memorize the spelling words, get 100% on the spelling test, and then in his writing would constantly misspell those same words. And they were your basic CBC words that he would be misspelling. Also with reading, he did a lot of skipping. He had a really hard time with tracking while he was reading, and his short-term memory was a really difficult thing for him. Memorizing math facts, still struggles with that today. And fourth grade was when it really hit me, okay, there is something definitely going on with this child, because he was getting into more multi-syllable words with spelling, and he just could not get it. He wasn't hearing the sounds properly. He really didn't get that phonics training that he needed early on, and so I think that really made a big impact on him in sounding out words, to the point where I took him to get his hearing checked because I thought he was not hearing things correctly. With Jacob, it really stands out with blends and vowel teams and some of those simple spelling rules. That's really where he was struggling.
It's funny that you mentioned taking him to get his hearing checked, because that's what I hear quite often as the first step. They're like, I got their hearing checked, I got their vision checked, and they still can't read.
Yeah.
And a lot of the characteristics you mentioned, I mean, are textbook signs
Yes.
of a child struggling with dyslexia.
Yes.
And I'm so glad the school was supporting him, but at the same time, the research all suggests that early intervention, early diagnosis is key.
And he was getting intervention, but I don't believe he was getting the right intervention.
Right.
Reading with him over and over again really was not helping him. It wasn't until we started isolating sounds and teaching him those sounds and teaching him. I went through the basic alphabet once I started with RLAC with him, with layer 1 cards, and he did not know what qua was, and he didn't know the C, the K, and the CK. He didn't understand some of those basic things, and he was in 4th grade by this point. So yes, he was getting intervention, but he really wasn't getting the right intervention at that point either, which was a hard thing to deal with. Yeah. And the thing with Jacob too, they were giving him intervention and he would become successful, and then they would take the intervention away because he had gotten success with that, and he really is what I would call your bubble kid. Despite his dyslexia, he was at grade level. So because he was at grade level, they were really on the fence whether or not he needed accommodations given to him, so it was a struggle to get him those.
Now, when did you actually decide to get an evaluation, and how did you go about that?
Well, we had him evaluated in school, and I was, being an educator, I was like, oh, well, they're going to tell me what is going on with him. I was under the impression that schools could help you come to those conclusions and diagnose. I found out later on that is just not the case. So we had him evaluated at school, and he did qualify for a specific learning disability, but that was it. So it really wasn't what his learning, I mean, specific learning disability covers many things.
Yeah,
it's a very wide spectrum. So it wasn't until 4th grade when my husband and I really needed to find out what was going on with him so we could get him the proper help. So at that point we went to an outside source, and it was very expensive to do, but we felt it was necessary and important enough. To be honest with you, my husband was not convinced there was anything going on with Jacob at that point. He was just like, I don't know, maybe he's just being lazy, you know, he needs to work harder. So once we got those results and sat down and really looked at it, we both knew, yeah, without a doubt, this child is dyslexia. It has dyslexia. So that's really when we did it. It was 4th grade.
Now, did anything change in the school when you finally got that diagnosis, or was it a challenge to get him the proper intervention?
It was a big challenge. So we received that diagnosis in 4th grade. So going into 5th grade, I was convinced, okay, we have this diagnosis. They can't argue with this.
Yeah.
They did. And so, because he was a child that is a bubble kid, and that's the best way I can describe him, is he has his ups and his downs, and he'll do well and then he won't do well. And the school really is limited in how many kids they can help. And so a lot of those bubble kids slip through the cracks because they are capable of kind of holding their head above water for a certain amount of time. And as much as it isn't that the school doesn't want to help them, I just don't think they know how, or they didn't have the resources to help him.
Right.
So we had an IEP meeting, and I adjourned the meeting 3 different occasions, and just basically was not accepting that he wasn't going to get accommodations. And my biggest fear was middle school, because I knew that was going to be a bigger issue than elementary school. So come middle school, I wanted that IEP in place, and him receiving the accommodations that I knew would help him be successful in school. So we did receive it, and he's in 6th grade. He has an IEP and has straight A's. So he has all the accommodations in place and really is doing really well with all the help. So,
what accommodations do they have in place at school for him?
So he is given extended time on projects, and he is also given extended time on tests. Most of his tests are read to him. He listens. He just did it was like a book report, and they listened to it on audio. And he also read it also, but he listened to the majority of the book on audio, so that he could keep up. He has modified homework, so there are times where he doesn't have to do as many problems as other kids, because homework for Jacob that should take somebody 20 minutes will take him up to an hour to 2 hours to sometimes finish that homework. So a lot of times that is modified for him.
And then what kind of accommodations or what kind of supports do you have in place at home? Is there anything special that you do?
Yes, we have a specific time when he does homework. He comes home from school, he has his snack, and we start homework right away. Because if I wait until after dinner, before bedtime, that's when the meltdowns happen. So we
never any fun.
Yes,
the
so
meltdowns are not fun.
We found that was the best for him. He actually has noise canceling headphones to kind of cancel out his little brother from making a lot of noise, because I can only keep him quiet so long. And he really, the routine of doing the homework and having that. So he tries all of his homework first, and there are times I have to read the directions to him, but for the most part he does it, and then we go back, and any problems he has, then we go over those together.
Now, I have a 2-part question here. The first part question is going to be, what struggles do you notice that he faces that maybe other children don't? And then the second part is going to be, what strengths do you see that he has? Because
the biggest struggle Jacob has is, I would say, math facts and like memorizing things. He has a really hard time with memorizing things, so anytime I can come up with an acronym or something to go along with memorizing something, that is helpful to him. He also gets overwhelmed very easily. So if he's given a piece of paper with 50 problems on it, you just see him just melts, because it's just overwhelming. The numbers or the letters are moving around for him. He has a hard time focusing and concentrating on that. So giving him one problem at a time is also very helpful to him, and saying, okay, let's take this one step at a time. You can do this, but don't beat yourself up about this. Jacob has a ton of strengths. He's the most caring child you will meet. He's done a Toys for Tots drive for the last 3 or 4 years. He sets a goal. He makes flyers. He gives them to our neighbors. He really he has a plan. Last year he collected 97 toys. This year his goal is 125 toys.
That's awesome.
So he's just a very caring child. He did student council last year. He just made yearbook staff to be a photographer for yearbook staff this year.
Congratulations to him.
Yes, he's a great kid. I would say Jacob is an out-of-the-box thinker and really encompasses caring for others. Jacob, anytime there's a child around, he is reaching out to that child. He's including other kids. He's very helpful, so he will definitely do something helping people, I'm sure, one day.
Now, are there any struggles that you've gone through as a parent in raising Jacob, especially through schooling?
Yes, I think the biggest thing for me being a teacher, it was a really hard thing for me to accept that if we worked on homework for an hour, it was okay for me to write a note on it and say, we worked on this for an hour, can you please try working on it? Because I had the belief, this is your homework, we must complete your homework.
Yeah.
So that was a really hard thing for me to swallow as a teacher and as a mom. I wanted him to be held up to his responsibilities, but I needed to let go of the fact that it was okay if there were times we didn't finish his homework because we worked on it a really long time.
Yeah.
The other struggle I face is convincing people that dyslexia is real. Within our own family, we had people that questioned whether or not we should give him that label, and were we making him think there was something wrong with him because we let him know he was dyslexic as soon as we had that test done. So that I felt like I needed to let go of the fact that I needed to defend our decision on including Jacob in the process. And the best thing I can say about that is these kids sit in class every day and they know that they're struggling.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing with Jacob was he was coming home and saying he was stupid. And so when I sat him down and we said, you know, we did this testing and the testing came to some conclusions, and these are the conclusions they came to, and we explained dyslexia and what that meant. Jacob looked up, his eyes filled with tears, and said, so I'm not stupid, because I just thought I was stupid. So it made the money worth it, because he's owned it at this point. We then went into researching dyslexia and showing how successful people with dyslexia can be. And he can name you off every famous person that has dyslexia and all of their accomplishments.
And there are a lot of them.
There are a lot of them. So I think letting him know that there's nothing wrong with you, your brain just works a little different, you process information differently, and this is the way you need to learn and how we can teach you to be successful. So teaching him to become his own advocate was a big thing, and he's done a great job with doing that. So yeah, it was interesting when we received the diagnosis of dyslexia for Jacob. I had a lot of his teachers come up and go, I just would have never thought he was dyslexic. His vocabulary is so large and he's able to speak so well. And I remember thinking,
that's one of the signs.
That doesn't mean anything. So I think educating his teachers on what dyslexia really looks like was a big goal of mine. And because I think that they're probably seeing many children with dyslexia that have high IQs and are struggling, and it's not, like I said, teachers care, they just don't know how to identify this problem. So that was a big feat for me.
Yeah, and I will be honest, I went through teaching school relatively recently. It was in the last 5 years that I graduated. I did not learn anything about dyslexia in my teaching courses.
Right.
And then I came and started working for RLAC and doing this, and I was just floored because the statistics usually say about 20% of the population is somewhere on the spectrum of dyslexia. And it does exist on a spectrum. It's kind of like hypertension. You can have really severe dyslexia or you can have mild dyslexia. Right. And raising awareness
it's key, and I think it is amazing to me how prevalent dyslexia is and how underdiagnosed it is. And since I've started working with RLAC and since I've found out that my own son is dyslexic, I'm amazed how many parents are having the same struggles that I had, and you know, they're looking to the school for answers and the school doesn't have the answers. And many people don't have the means to go out and get that outside diagnosis. So that really is an issue, you know.
Yeah. Raising awareness is one of my big goals. Yes. That's part of the reason for this blog, for you watching the video right now.
It's one of my goals also.
Well, to wrap up then, what is one of the things that you just wish teachers knew about working with students with dyslexia? Because they will, just by odds, have several in their classrooms.
I think one of my biggest goals is that I wish teachers would know that these students are your everyday students. They're your really good students and they're your low students, because there is such a spectrum, and that those saying to a student just try harder or you're not putting in all your effort is one of the worst things to say, because those students are sitting in school day after day after day giving it their all, and they keep coming back, glutton for punishment, if you will, and they're trying more than anyone else. And so really just opening teachers' eyes and teaching them what dyslexia looks like, because there are simple accommodations that you can do for a student, even if they don't have an IEP or a 504 plan, that teachers could put into place that would help those students